Attunement with the divine will is the most important factor in attracting success. This from The Law of Success by Paramahansa Yogananda, that master meditator who also produced about 30 books, maybe more. My book, A Fish and Water Athirst, The Globe-Trotting Adventures of a Meditating Angler and Diver, is dedicated to him. Please join me for this reading today on Chapter 1. Not quite skunked. On a couple of occasions, I have come across simple boat plans, sometimes online, sometimes in do-it-yourself encyclopedias, which looked quite buildable. The first plan I made use of allowed me to produce a sturdy kayak, though the encyclopedia that contained the original blueprints had been out of print for several decades. The old how-to manual promised that I could build my kayak, which the authors had christened the Canvasback, for exactly $21.81, if I remember right. The project took me several seasons to finish as a young teenager and cost about 10 times what the old book suggested it would. But when I finally finished, I was quite proud of my little boat and eager to see if it would float. It did, and I caught a lot of fish from that light 12-foot yak. I even took it out once this season, and it helped me get to where the bass were biting, though I noticed it needed a small canvas patch. The second boat I built was a fishing skiff, which helped me explore larger lakes. After a few seasons, I gave that boat to a friend. I think he made it into a flower garden. Today, my third boat, the St. Mary, is parked in the barn at the farm, and she is seaworthy. The first time I took the St. Mary out, I put her on the Rock River near an early and still marked horse-drawn ferry crossing in Rockton, Illinois. I had just finished the project the day before. Needless to say, I was excited and eager to get my boat on the water. I was so bemused, in fact, that I hadn't paid much attention to the height of the river. It was in flood stage. When I discovered that the ramp at the local park was closed, I cleverly found a way around the yellow emergency barricades. Parking near the churning boat ramp, I lifted my new skiff off the roof of the car. Upon launching, I found my only motor, a little electric trolling motor my Uncle Dick had gifted to me when he outgrew it, wouldn't start. I felt a little like a kid on his first ride down the big slide at the water park, and I watched with some trepidation as my beckoning Nissan disappeared behind a screen of trees. Frightening as it was, I was determined to have a good float, now that I was out of range of the boat landing. My white-knuckled enthusiasm made me oblivious to any danger. I had carried along a meditation card, which reminded me to fix my mind unwinkingly on safety and success, and to remain confident. I was able to relax and enjoy the ride, firming up the courage I needed to navigate my boat through the rough waters. It is the simplest of reminders sometimes which keeps us from the danger of doubt. At the first bridge crossing, the bottom of my boat was thrown up onto a large tree branch, which lay submerged a few inches below the churning flow. I had to work hard to spot the sunken tree, which had settled against a concrete bridge abutment, and find a way to slide the skiff free. Concentrating deeply, I summoned a deep strength, remembering that the soul is omnipotent, as the master meditators remind. Finding the balancing point for the boat on that log jam, I rocked the skiff back and forth until the hull finally slid free. Once I was moving again, I breathed a sigh of relief and began to watch the water carefully for potential dangers. The swollen river pulled me quickly downstream, and I was glad to be moving along smartly again. Approaching a river bend where the current was considerably slower, I spotted a pot of carp feeding on the surface in a swirling black eddy, deep under some flooded foliage. There were dozens of mouths, some big, some small, gulping at the surface, picking off bits of grass and drifting insects. The 13-foot craft glided slowly to the center of the excited school. I was able to watch the heavy bronze fish feed directly in front of me for several minutes. They were too absorbed in their feeding frenzy to take much notice of me and my light gray gunnels. The carp were in high gear. They'd been driven by the chocolate-colored water into their erstwhile refuge, which appeared to me like a floating cafeteria. Together we had found a calm spot in the eye of the storm of raging waters, and I watched in wonder as the fish fed eagerly all around my new skiff, carping and slurping. Their rubbery lips siphoned in insects and green clumps as they worked their way along the edge of my hull hungrily. I didn't try to catch any fish from that large pot of carp. I felt content just to watch them as they swam and fed in a broad pulsing circle all around my joyful bark. After quite a long time, I bid them goodbye and moved back toward the main current, making my way quickly downstream. Broad fields, forests, and a few hidden homes zoomed by. I found myself in a long green tunnel of leaves where a row of enormous maples lined both banks, arching out toward the center of the river. One large branch broke off and made a tremendous splash a few yards away. Somehow I wasn't frightened so much as amazed. Something had warned me to look up. After drifting along for several miles, I decided to let down a line and try my luck. Dropping a heavy jig to the bottom, I angled for a long time before I felt a tug on the line. I set the hook hard and began my retrieve. Reeling steadily against strong pressure, I soon brought my fish up to the river surface. What revealed itself surprised me. I'd hooked a giant shellfish. The great river clam had closed itself around my hook, snapping shut as the jig brushed itself against the bottom of the hook. My hook set had pulled the outsized bivalve up and out of the sand, lining the bottom of the river. That hefty mollusk sat in the bottom of my brand new hull, spitting muddy river water. I have to admit that the first thunk of it on the resonant plywood hull contented me deeply, and it made me laugh. I thought to myself, this day has been quite an adventure, but at least I can say that I was not quite skunked. Drifting on for another hour or two in the heavy current, I marveled at how dry my little boat had stayed while I scanned the banks for a landing area where I could safely disembark. Without a motor, I was at the mercy of the wild currents, but I felt at peace, guided by a subtle power. I continued to concentrate, praying simply and with true faith as I visualized a successful landing. Just after sunset, I spotted a long board floating well ahead of my curved prow. A fast seam of current guided the board to hand. It was an old 2x4, about 12 feet in length. I employed it as a simple paddle. The weathered piece of lumber had a few nails in it, so I had to be careful how I held on. The coarse, pierced stud reminded me of the cross of Jesus Christ, of his nail-scarred hands, and also of his triumphant resurrection. I knew in my heart that I would be able to resurrect my little boat from the greedy, churning river soon. The longboard had been a sure sign to me that the indweller was watching over me carefully. I felt energized now to make a good landing in the racing eddies near the dark bank. This last bit of luck proved to be enough to get me up onto the bank when the opportunity arose. I was able to propel myself along and maneuver close to the shore by paddling hard. For most of the float, I had been in the wilds, with little access to shore since trees and small bushes grew up and over the banks in many places. The river was moving so fast that it was very difficult to get close to small landing areas, even when they became visible. There were many sections of eroded riverbank that were covered by long grasses. I knew that I would have to time my paddling just right in order to land my new boat in an open knoll. Shortly after I had the good luck of finding that old salvific plank, I floated under a bridge which brought me toward a dark county park. The water and sky were black now. I felt as though I'd been floating along in a river of India ink. The current felt heavy and sticky, and the pale light of the bridge illuminated little of the bank, though it cast a glittering incandescence upon the sweating blackness, producing a surreal and stark contrast. A swarm of insects, some bats and night birds, winged hungrily near my lonely boat, churning the humid air. A small grassy bank finally came into view, barely visible in the moonlight. Some portions of the high bank had crumbled and collapsed into the river, making it difficult to approach. With absolute meditative willpower, after a full day on the river, I was able to pull myself up onto that soggy, black bank. Half swimming, half paddling, I finally made landfall. Exhausted and relieved, I was happy just to sit still on the soft grass for a while. After catching my breath, I dragged the boat, motor, and gear up and out of the swirling currents and onto the soft grass. The sudden stillness of the firm bank felt alien, and I drank in the calm until I began to feel my sore muscles. I'd had a little bit of fishing success. The giant clam was still spitting river water in the bottom of the boat. I knew I would have to leave the boat and rods and motor there in the middle of the woods and walk home. Deliberating only a minute, I ceremoniously, if playfully, cast the giant clam back into the heavy current before disappearing into the dark green wood. It was a long walk, many country miles. I was soaking wet and my blue jeans made a swish, swish sound as I moved slowly along past mid-season cornfields and silent rural intersections. By the time I got home, cleaned myself up and climbed into bed, I was thoroughly fatigued. The morning sun was approaching its holy horizon. I had set the little devotional card by my bed, and as I switched off the lights, I prayed sincerely, Lord, you have given me another adventure. Thank you for sending your angels to protect and to entertain. Allow that I may find you in my sweet dreams now. It didn't take me long to doze off, and I slept a long, heavy slumber. Perhaps I dreamt of carp, or clams, or the bark of St. Mary who ferries souls to safe shores. If you've enjoyed this reading, please like, subscribe, share, and repost. Namaste. May we continue to go the distance, knowing that success comes through, I think, truly loving one another. Take care.